Coming off the Artemis 2 hype, I was all too happy to accept a key and make coverage for the now recent early access release for Solar Expanse. Solar Expanse is developed by Space Ops and published by Games Operator, releasing in April and slated to have about a year before full release. In Solar Expanse, you manage a space exploration company/organization to explore and spread humanity's reach throughout the solar system and eventually beyond. I played it for about 4 hours and wanted to share my first impressions. You start by selecting one of several different corporations, with only one of them being Solex, and the rest being real-world space agencies, which are obviously NASA, the ESA, European Space Agency, the CNSA, the China National Space Administration, and Roscosmos, the Russian Space Agency. Each of them have their own starter bonuses, with different starter tech being already unlocked. Additionally, you could also set up your game to have rival corporations that you'd be competing with. I didn't really notice this at all though. I'm unsure if there's limited resources that only the ones who colonized first could get access to. It'd be interesting if there were some sort of space race mechanic for different milestones that could result in more resources from potential sponsors or something. But anyway, most of the time I didn't tend to notice my other neighbor gallivanting across the solar system. Once you've chosen who you're representing, you're ready to start sending missions out into the solar system. The game gives you mission goals to work towards and build up to. Each of these are meant to help guide you with how to play the game and give you things to think about when planning your missions. Personally, I felt there was a lot of hand-holding in the beginning that fell off really quickly with not much in the middle between these 2 points to try and transition me better into the wider game. For instance, I was instructed to make a Hermes-class ship to travel between other planets more efficiently since it runs on noble gases instead of chemical fuel. However, once I transported my astronauts to Mars via the Hermes, I found that my ship was locked in Martian orbit with no way of returning home. Up until this point, I had always just been using the fuel that it said I needed without ever thinking about bringing extra for return trips. Obviously, in this example, and many others like it, the problem was just me not planning properly. If I were to continue playing or start over, then these things would be more apparent to me as I'd learned from past failures, which I'm sure is part of the point. The main objective of the game is to spread throughout the solar system and exploit it every step of the way. Each celestial body, whether planet, moon, or asteroid, has resources on it for your budding space organization to fly out to and claim. The sheer scale of it sounds amazing, but unfortunately, I felt it got rather unwieldy very quickly. I only had presence on the moon and Mars, but I was thinking how just trying to move resources around felt like a chore. I mentioned the previous example of my ship not having any noble gas to fly, but fuel in general ended up being a big deal. The game suggested using the moon as a way to make fuel and use it to send back to Earth orbit, where there was an orbital shipyard. However, there were problems with this. One main problem is that without having the infrastructure in space to send other materials to construct ships, then everything had to be sent from Earth. Which sorta made the whole point of making ships in space kinda pointless since you still needed a lot of fuel to launch from the planet. That is obviously something that could have been remedied, and I think is just an issue with the order of when the missions popped up. Another problem I had was the game's use of cyclical missions. These are missions that are repeated based on a certain parameter. It could either run indefinitely, run X number of transfers, or run until X number of resources have been transported. I did the initial 3 transfers the mission told me to do, but eventually decided that I wanted to keep sending fuel to Earth's orbit. Obviously, this was under the impression that it would be useful to me to do, but maybe it would have made more sense to just launch it into the moon's orbit and use that as a refueling point for longer intersolar missions. Anyway, what I wish it had the option for is to make sure any sent fuel couldn't go below a certain amount. And also it would be nice to have a similar option to keep sending until a resource reaches a certain amount at the target destination. Instead, what ended up happening is that I received a notification saying the cyclical mission was cancelled because there was no more fuel for it to continue transferring. It would help a lot with the supplies resource as well, which the people living off-world obviously need. I didn't get a notification saying that my moon colonists needed supplies until it hit 0. Luckily, I was able to get supplies to the moon in time, but anywhere else, and your entire colony would be screwed, if it wasn't already self-sufficient. Something like an option to make sure supplies never dip below a desired amount would be really nice. I'd like to also mention the presentation of the game. First off, be prepared to be staring at menus mainly and a really fast spinning Earth, or whatever planet of focus you're on as you begin expanding outwards. I'm sure the devs have to work within their budget, but I have to say, I was a bit disappointed that we couldn't zoom down to a level where we could see our budding colonies on other worlds. You can zoom in on stations or ships though, which is cool. To me, this didn't give me the same satisfaction I might get for landing a Kerbal on the moon. While they're not the same type of game at all, I guess I sorta wanted to capture that feeling when playing this. Perhaps that comes further down the line when you expand to other parts of the solar system, have vast interconnected supply chains, and begin terraforming the cosmos. I don't know. The other thing I want to say is, this game could really benefit from some more music tracks. It's not high priority over gameplay adjustments and additions, but that one track that played on loop was starting to drive me crazy. Also, I felt it was too epic. Space definitely has room for epic soundtracks, but I think primarily I prefer something more low-key and ambient. But once again, that's probably KSP talking. Before I get into my final thoughts, if you're enjoying the video or found it helpful, then please consider giving this video a like and subscribing for more video game coverage in the future in the form of reviews and first impressions. And if you're feeling extra generous, then you could tip me via YouTube Super Thanks or consider joining my YouTube membership. Every little bit goes a long way in helping improve the channel. Solar Expanse runs for $17.99 USD, and I put in just over 4 hours for this first impression, as I mentioned at the start. There's obviously tons more content here, but I'm not sure that I'm on board to play it at the moment. That being said, I'm not really the target audience for the game. I'm not the biggest on these logistics, supply chain kinds of games, and I think that might be causing some friction between me and Solar Expanse. However, I still feel that my earlier critiques still hold weight regardless of this. The promise of this game is neat though. The ability to chart the course of space exploration and missions over centuries is something that I don't think you'd find very often. Currently, you can play in our very own solar neighborhood, but other systems will be introduced in the future for interstellar travel, along with megastructures, advanced space stations, and more. With all that upcoming, I'm definitely interested in returning to this when it's fully released. If you played the game, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't, then let me know if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, or if you have any other questions. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.